thank you for waking us all up out here, for all you do.
Thank you for giving us a voice.
For being out there helping keep the constitutional republic.
I want to thank you for
your support for veterans in the military.
Educating us.
Standing up for conservatism.
Giving us the truth.
Daybreak with Drew Steele.
But tonight is going to be different. Tonight we're going to do something we haven't done before. Tonight we're going to give America hope.
Giving America hope tonight. That was Speaker McCarthy last night, giving America hope as it passed the House, passing it. What has been quite the discussion leading up to yesterday, and the House voting by an overwhelming majority to increase the debt limit in exchange for Republican-backed measures to rein in spending. Is that how it went down? I mean, that's how it's been described. Congressman Byron Donalds is joining us right now on Daybreak 92.5 Fox News. I am curious to get his thoughts on all of this. First of all, good morning. How are you, sir?
Morning, Drew. Yeah.
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 So I guess I don't necessarily have to ask how you voted, but how did you vote and why?
Oh, I voted no, and I was very clear on that. And look, when they called us Saturday saying that they wanted to have a conference call because we reached a tentative agreement, I said, okay, let me see what they actually have. And as the leadership was going through the elements of the deal, I'm sitting there and I'm listening and I'm like tapping down stuff in my computer, and I'm just like, this doesn't sound good. I don't really think I like this. So I get a call. I believe it's from the whip, and he goes, how you feeling about this? And I'm like, based upon what I'm hearing, I'm a no. And they go, well, you want to just like read the language? I was like, no, I definitely need to read this bill because I don't like what I'm hearing. Let me read it. And then when I read the bill, I went from no to absolutely no. And look, it's just a bad bill. And I know that, I watched CNBC this morning, CNBC, of course, because it's a business network. They're saying we averted catastrophe. Everybody didn't get what they wanted, blah, 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 blah. MSNBC is giddy. They're like trying to hold their giddiness in because they know the Senate still has to go through this and they don't want any issues in the Senate. There was a Democrat member of Congress who is, he's not a squad member, but he's a leftist. Been in this town a long time. He said to a reporter, okay, now we can finally speak the truth. We rolled the Republicans. The Democrats in this town, let me explain something to everybody back home.
Yeah.
If there's a bill that's moving through the House of Representatives that really goes at the Democrat agenda and really cuts spending here, and let's be very clear, what drives spending in Washington are three things. One, our Social Security and Medicare, and nobody was discussing that. Two is the Defense Department, and we do have issues in DOD and at the Pentagon that we got to clean up. And three are the agencies. And the Democrats scream bloody murder if you actually cut the agencies down, because the agencies are doing all of the work that they want to do throughout the country, okay?
Yeah.
When the Democrats on Capitol Hill, on the week of a debt ceiling vote, aren't holding press conferences, aren't tweeting out how upset they are, that should tell you everything you need to know. And I was telling my Republican colleagues, look around the Capitol. The squad is not holding a press conference. The Progressive Caucus is not holding press conferences. They're not doing TV interviews. They're being very, very quiet. And the reason they are being very, very quiet is because they like this deal. This deal keeps their priorities. This deal raises $4 trillion in debt. This deal does nothing with respect to the food stamp program. It actually expands, according to a lot of estimates that are coming out right now. And then last but not least, this bill does not touch any of the Green New Deal subsidies, which are going to cost us at least $1.2 trillion and could cost us more.
Well, it's weird, though, because the squad voted no. I mean, I'm looking at all the no votes, and all I see are the squad members. I see Jamal Bowman. I see AOC. I see I see Cori Bush. I see all of them. They all voted no. So is the suggestion that they voted no to be the no vote, but deep down they knew they got the Democrat majority, and they're going to get what they want But then what? They have a no vote so that they can go and say they wanted to do even more to push progressive policies and to spend more, but it wasn't enough. I mean, I'm trying to figure out what their angle is.
What they're voting, though, is because they feel that we should not be cutting spending at all. So in the bill, there's about $12 billion in cuts year one. They're absolutely opposed to that. We rescind the COVID money. Not all of it, because actually about $14 billion of the COVID money, the administration tied up in contracts right before all this was going down. So as you read the bill, there's about $14 billion, if not more, that's tied up in contracts that the administration put out. And so when I was like, well, what's up with this $14 billion? The staff was like, well, a lot of this money's been tied up with contracts, and the White House has been continuously doing that. And I said, this is the problem. That right there is the problem. That's the part right there. They didn't like the stuff with permitting. They did not like that. And then there was a green light to the Mountain Valley pipeline that goes through West Virginia. That's the Joe Manchin project, and they were opposed to that.
Right.
But other than that, they weren't complaining about the debt ceiling raise, which is the big deal in this bill.
Yeah.
They weren't complaining about that. And, $12 billion cut in the agencies, they don't like it, but they weren't complaining about that.
Yeah,
when I left the floor after the rule vote, I was talking to two Democrats and the staff director for the Congressional Black Caucus, who I've known for years, right? I asked them, I said, hey, you guys are quiet on this bill. They just looked at me. And I said, then I started reading the bill, and I realized why you guys are quiet. And they started laughing.
Huh. Unbelievable. Yeah, and may I remind everybody, because we're getting the billions and trillions all crossed, $12 billion in cuts, $4 trillion in new debt, $12 billion. I mean, you hear those numbers and you think this is a joke. You're $12 billion? That's like right now for trillions, it's a drop in the bucket. I mean, nothing is a drop in the bucket technically, but in all seriousness, the numbers now are astronomical. And the second thing I was going to ask you about, and I don't know if you heard anything about this, because this got brought to my attention, and it was what I'm concerned about with regard to pulling back those the clawing back, if you will, the COVID spending, the COVID dollars. I've been worried that there's a way that the Biden administration is going to figure out some way to tuck it in, like to tuck it, to put it someplace, to store it. And I found out, somebody sent me a tweet about the fact that $11 billion was going to the Commerce Department, scheduled for the 24-25 budget, that they were going to put it, they were going to put it there. When Biden's 23 budget asked for zero, like didn't have any request for the money, almost as if they're saying, hey, let's figure out places that we can put the money and store it so that it's accounted for, so that it's earmarked, let's say, so that it won't be clawed back, quote unquote. Have you heard anything like that?
No, I know exactly what you're talking about. That is true. It is being held over at Commerce. There is no explanation as to why. So what we've been able to, and I say we, it's been like myself, Chip Roy, and several of us, what we surmise is that money is just to be held in abeyance, to be held on to the side in case something changes down the line in Washington and they want to reuse that money for something else. That's what's going on there. Oh, one other piece of this bill.
Yeah.
The clawback on the IRS. When you read the bill, all that happens is that we pulled $1.5 billion out of the $80 billion that Nancy Pelosi and Joe Biden gave the IRS. But there's no provision in the bill to stop the IRS agents from being hired this year. No provision. It's not in the bill. It's not in the bill language.
Wow.
When we raised this, we were told, well, no, but it's not going to happen. So what is that, a handshake deal? Because we know how the Democrats love their handshake deals. Ronald Reagan, when he signed amnesty in 86, it was because the deal was that we were going to secure the border. I'll ask you, Drew, did we ever secure the border? No, we didn't. And so, look, that's what was put on the floor. You had 71 Republicans go against it, which was actually my estimate. I was telling people 50 to 70 Republicans are going no on this bill. It could go higher, but I think that's kind of where it is, and there's other reasons for that. But look, at the end of the day, in my view, this is not a good deal. If you look at this deal without the debt ceiling, oh, okay, this is actually pretty good because we're cutting some spending, we're doing some things, okay, but all of that costs the American people $4 trillion. I'm out.
Right.
That's why I voted no.
Right. Congressman Byron Donalds joining us on Daybreak 92.5 Fox News. Did we have leverage? Was there leverage to begin? Okay. So
yes.
So if we had leverage, we had leverage. Jim Jordan knew we had leverage. Marjorie Taylor Greene knew we had leverage. People that voted for this knew we had leverage. Why vote for this?
Well, no, this is the inside baseball stuff.
Yeah.
I think you have members who voted for this bill because they wanted to be supportive of the speaker, and they didn't want the speaker to be embarrassed on this vote, so they stuck with him. I think you have members who voted. I know you have members who voted for this bill because in their districts, a default is the worst possible thing that could happen. And let me be clear on this. If the United States did not have the ability to, we got to stop calling it a default.
Right.
If the United States does not have the ability to borrow more money, what happens is the agencies go into automatic shutdown. On June 2nd, Janet Yellen made the payments to Social Security. She made the payments on the debt, and she made the payments in Medicare, and I think Medicaid as well. And at that point, by June 5, June 7, there's not enough money for the agencies to continue to operate. That's your quote unquote default. What it really means is that Washington cannot borrow more money to keep the agencies running. And at that point, does it cause some issues? Yes. Would the bond markets, the yields in the bond markets go up? Yes, they would. But here's the leverage point that you talk about. At that point, everybody in Washington, whether you're a squad member or a Freedom Caucus member or whatever the case may be, it doesn't matter. Everybody in Washington is going to be getting phone calls from everybody in their districts, every business interest, and every citizen because the financial turmoil would be real. But that is the leverage point that drives the deal. In our conference, and I'm going to speak about Republicans now. In our conference, we have members that are so afraid of this that they were like, you know what, we just can't possibly do this. I'll vote for whatever deal comes through because we can't possibly do this. There's another faction in Washington, the defense guys. The defense hawks are not happy about this because it does cap defense spending at $886 billion next year, and they want to spend $20 billion more. And so I tell the guys who are the defense guys up here, like, guys, I want to have a strong military. I want to have a lean, mean fighting machine, but you just can't continue to spend money recklessly for, frankly, a bunch of contracts that don't get delivered on time. Because if we spend the country into oblivion, you ain't going to have any money for defense.
Yeah.
Let's just be straight about that.
Yeah.
And so there's all those different factions that are up here on Capitol Hill. And it's going to take some real strength, and it's going to, frankly, taking this town to a place it doesn't want to go to get the necessary reforms. But did I think we had leverage in this fight? Yes, I think we absolutely did. I think that where we lost the leverage was the desire to get a deal done, as opposed to getting the right deal.
Yeah, and and forgive me for saying it, but boy, that's lazy. That's lazy for these politicians who in their districts could have gone out and said, look, this is why I would vote no for this. This is the idea of a default. It's not going to happen. Here's the way, laying it out the way you did. It's lazy to not go to their constituents and say that because it would have been in the hands of the Democrats to be the ones, and the American people by polling is saying that they were with you on this. Like they wanted the cuts in spending, right? So you had everything that we haven't seen in the longest time, every wind at our back, right? The perfect storm, if you will, of laying it at the hands of Democrats. And then the choice was made to not do it. And for many people, that's just it's a frustration. And then they look for the scapegoat. Is it McCarthy's fault? Is it leadership's fault? Whose fault is it? Because they believe, rightly so, that there was an advantage point here that we haven't had in a long time, which speaks to how well the Freedom Caucus has been doing, how well you've been doing, in a lot of ways, how well the speaker and what he has been doing up to this point. And so when you have all of that, and then to acquiesce to what? Like it wasn't the American people. It's not the the caucus, what were you acquiescing to? A media that was doing their best and Democrats that weren't named Nancy Pelosi that were doing their best to make you sound like every bad name in the book, but that wasn't working either because you made a deal, because you had it, because you had a plan. So
the House was the only body that actually had a plan.
Right.
And so we had a plan. The White House did nothing. The Senate did nothing. So we had all of the rhetorical and political leverage in this. And in my view, like I just told you, we sought to get a deal done as opposed to driving the best possible deal. Because driving the best possible deal is turning the screws, here in this town. Look, Drew, I'm very clear about what Washington is. This town only operates on leverage and at cliffs. And if it's normal operating time, nobody in this town wants to do anything of substance because everybody's got their fingers their hands in the cookie jar in some way, shape, or form. And it's only until you hear mom coming in the kitchen and your hand's going to get slapped that this town moves.
Right.
And I think that potential was all there. I had colleagues of mine who voted for this bill, and they were like, well, Byron, what would you have done different? What would you have done different? And I'm like, and I tell them, like, well, first of all, I wasn't in the room for the negotiations. So I really can't tell you what they did right or did wrong. Like, I know Garrett Graves. When we were doing the speaker stuff at the beginning of the year, Garrett Graves was across the table from me as we were negotiating this stuff. I know Garrett Graves. I know Patrick McHenry. I respect them and I like them. But somewhere the decision was made, we have to get a deal. We can't let this thing go because I think what they feel is that they would have lost the leverage points in such a drastic way that it would have been a worse deal. But one of the big things in this deal that I didn't even really talk about, that I think, Drew, is important. Mm-hmm. This bill is now the Republican position that post-COVID spending levels are okay.
And they're not.
Because this bill puts in 2022 spending caps on the federal agencies. This is outside of defense and outside of the Veterans Administration.
Which, by the way, you were talking about this, and you were talking about this early on and making sure this didn't happen, that we weren't going to be at post-COVID levels. You've been saying it since day one. And has anyone listened?
Well, people have listened. I will tell people have listened. And the reason why we got the bill that passed, the first bill that passed the House, Limit, Save, Grow, that bill, a big reason why we moved those numbers back, where we were going to get the agencies to below the COVID pandemic levels, get back to somewhat normalcy, is because we were constantly messaging that. I'll give the speaker credit in this. When it came to actually telling the American people what we needed to do and why, he was very consistent. House Republicans were very consistent, and we were operating in an environment where you have a president in Joe Biden who can't talk to the press. Like, he can't go out there and be the counter narrative to us. I had Democrats coming to me 3 weeks ago who were pissed because they were like, we're losing the messaging war. They came to me and said, Byron, you guys are kicking our, I'm not going to say the word.
Right, yeah.
But they're like, you guys are beating us. We're not happy. This is what they were telling me 3 weeks ago. So I'm telling our leadership, the Democrats are seriously concerned. They know we're winning the messaging war. Now is the time to turn the screws and get this deal done. Yeah. And I think we could have got a much better deal than what we got right now. Do I think we would have gotten the Limit, Save, Grow bill? No, I don't think we would have gotten that. I know that because Joe Biden's got to sign it, and the Senate is still got to go through the Senate.
Right.
But you'd have got something significantly better than this. Yeah. And the last piece I'll say on this is, I think that what we probably could have done is, you do your negotiation with Joe Biden. If he's not serious, you just get up from the table and leave. And you tell Chuck Schumer and the senators, go get to work and see what you could pass because we're done with the White House. Right. And that's where you go.
Congressman Byron Donald is joining us on Daybreak 92.5 Fox News. All right, my friend. I appreciate you. Thanks for getting up early with us, and we'll see you soon, okay?
All right. See you, Drew.
All right, see you.